Chapter 11, Puncturing the Cabal Veil. This chapter gets into one of the parasite class's favorite weapons, language itself, and the psychological tricks used to keep people divided, ashamed, distracted, and easy to steer. We're talking gaslighting, projection, false flags, virtue signaling, identity manipulation, and all the rhetorical nonsense that keeps smart people arguing in circles while the real game rolls on. Chapter 11, Puncturing the Cabal Veil. When you begin to truly pierce the veil of illusion cast by the parasite class, you'll start noticing that their strongest weapons aren't always bullets, mandates, or weapons of mass destruction. Often it is rhetoric, language, subtle manipulations of logic and perception designed to keep you confused, ashamed, and divided. The mind, after all, is the first battleground. Some of the topics in the following list were identified on the now lost boards of 8chan, one of the great gathering places of digital dissent, where whistleblowers and researchers drop breadcrumbs too dangerous to be seen by the masses. These boards, like the similarly dismantled Vote, VOAT, demonized in the mainstream, were where truths were decoded. On those boards, no one used their real names, not because of cowardice, but because telling the truth in a world ruled by deception is a dangerous act. Here are some of the most common manipulation tactics used by the parasite class and their media foot soldiers. Generalizations. This is one of the laziest yet corrosive tactics, blanket statements that require no thought, nuance, or critical evaluation. It's how division is sewn into the fabric of everyday conversation. Democrats are pedophiles. Trump supporters are racist. Men are toxic. Women are crazy. Conspiracy theorists are mentally ill. It's stupid. More dangerously, it's effective. Because generalizations tap into fear, tribalism, and identity, fostering hostility where dialogue should live. They divide by race, gender, belief system, and background. They are used to fracture the human collective into small, angry groups. This is 3D consciousness tethered to illusion, and it's intentional. Gaslighting. Borrowed from the Hitchcock film Gaslight, this tactic has become a signature move of both narcissists and governments alike. The essence of gaslighting is this: make the other person question their reality. You're overreacting. You're being dramatic. You're not well. Always so negative. You really believe that stuff? Or better, that's anti-Semitic. You're a homophobe. You're transphobic. You're an Islamophobe. Accusations have become the new silencers. Using labels that carry emotional and social taboo cause targets to retreat or suffer the backlash. That's the point. Gaslighting works by creating a double bind. You are forced to defend yourself against a fabricated accusation, one designed to entrap. The suggestion of the alleged offense lingers, regardless of evidence. It shifts the burden of proof and puts the accused on trial for daring to state things too clearly. It's what your emotionally manipulative ex said before turning your friends against you. What the media says when you question their narrative. The parasite class uses this technique consistently. Accuse a political opponent of the crimes he cannot defend. Imply mental instability in the truth teller. Call the whistleblower unhinged. Call the mom speaking out at a school board meeting a terrorist. Call the citizen asking questions a conspiracy theorist. Once the public hears the claim, the stain sticks. Gaslighting is not just a personal abuse. It's a state-sponsored strategy. The only antidote is clarity and the courage to trust what you know, even when no one else does. Projection. This is one of the oldest tricks in the psychological warfare playbook. Accuse others of what you yourself are doing. It's another way of disarming opposition and deflecting scrutiny. On the personal level, it can be subconscious, a knee-jerk defense. In politics, it's a deliberate decoy. If I accuse you of lying first, I redirect attention from my own deception. If I call you a threat to democracy, I don't have to explain the surveillance I authorized or the censorship I helped enforce. If I label you dangerous or unhinged, I protect myself from accountability. In current times, projection is everywhere. The same agencies that call for the blacklisting of independent journalists for spreading, quote, misinformation, coordinate narrative control behind the scenes. The media voices demanding transparency are the same ones laundering state-approved talking points. The political figures calling for unity are simultaneously fueling divisions through race, identity, and fear. Look at the recent disclosures. Leaked internal memos reveal how health officials, big tech, and intelligence bodies work together to suppress dissent while accusing critics of being anti-science. Education boards decry, quote, disinformation while quietly approving curriculums that rewrite history. Banks and financial platforms deplatform users in the name of safety while laundering billions for criminal networks. Projection is a weaponized inversion of truth. Say it first, say it loud, and brand the opposition before they have a chance to speak. The smear is the strategy. Once the label sticks, denier, phobe, conspiracy theorist, the real conversation dies. When you see a sudden media blitz, a viral accusation, or a chorus of outrage on repeat, ask, what truth is this trying to bury? What crime is being hidden in plain sight by pointing the finger elsewhere? Because in today's upside-down world, the louder the accusation, the deeper the confession. Misdirection. This is the magician's classic sleight of hand. While you're focused on one hand waving in the air, the other is planting the trick. Politicians and media use it constantly to deceive. Case in point, the evidence that the Russia collusion hoax used to justify surveillance, censorship, and years of political sabotage was orchestrated not just by intelligence insiders, but knowingly greenlit by a former president. The goal? Undermine the increasingly popular upstart before he took office. Rig the perception, control the narrative, ensure the outsider doesn't disrupt the system. Meanwhile, the unsecured server and tens of thousands of deleted emails, many pointing to deeply troubling connections, are once again buried and met with the same strategy. Deny, distract, and deflect. Ask a real question and watch what happens. Instead of answers, you get accusations. When questioned about election interference or intelligence corruption, you're called an extremist. When footage emerges of child trafficking or war crimes, you're told it's Russian disinformation. When the truth gets too close, they pivot, not to logic, but to emotion. Misdirection isn't just about changing the subject, it's about hijacking the listener's attention, replacing investigation with indignation, and diverting truth with trauma. A dead son is invoked to shield a live scandal. A buzzword is deployed to shut down dissent. A war is started in time to bury a leak. This isn't governance, it's theater. You are the intended audience, kept in the dark by the blinding flash of stagecraft. Once you stop watching the hand in the air, you'll start seeing the one behind the curtain. You'll realize the real magic trick is how long they've kept us hypnotized. False equivalence. This tactic thrives on lazy logic. It draws a false parallel between two unrelated events or actions, flattening the moral terrain so that atrocities and offenses blur into one gray, forgettable smear. It's how war crimes become footnotes and how whistleblowers get treated like felons. You're upset that intelligence agencies violated constitutional rights? Well, every government makes mistakes. Sure, they authorize gain-of-function research, but that's no worse than any other global health misstep. Okay, so the surveillance state expanded again. But didn't your side want better security too? False equivalence dilutes outrage. It numbs discernment. It treats systematic abuse and casual rudeness as moral equals, so that neither can be held accountable. When nothing is uniquely evil, nothing requires urgent change. This tactic is everywhere, from televised debates to social media pylons. It's used to dismiss the release of damning documents by saying, "That's just politics." It's how the exposure of child exploitation rings gets buried beneath scandals about misgendering. It's how calls for transparency are compared to witch hunts, while actual cover-ups are shrugged off as routine. It is hypocrisy weaponized to look like balance. It is spiritual poison. Because when the mind is trained to see all things as equal, it becomes blind to both beauty and evil. That's the aim, to strip you of discernment, to make you question your gut, to make you stop noticing what matters. This is a favorite move in the parasite playbook. Reduce everything to noise, and you'll never hear the signal. Once you recognize it, once you stop arguing in their sandbox of illusions, the spell begins to break. Clarity returns. With clarity comes sovereignty. That's how the magician loses their grip. Not when you play their game better, but when the rebel in you refuses to play at all. False flags. If you've heard the term false flag before and assumed it was some wild theory, it's time to erase that conditioning. False flags are not speculative. They are a well-documented tool of control used throughout history, particularly by regimes that want to consolidate power without resistance. They are staged or manipulated events designed to provoke a specific public response. They work almost every time. Take 9/11, one of the most impactful false flag operations in modern history. On that day, fear became a weapon. The narrative was pre-crafted. Foreign terrorists, religious extremists collapsing towers. What followed was an instant surrender of our freedoms. The Patriot Act, the rise of the surveillance state, biometric tracking, warrantless wiretaps, airport strip searches, all in the name of safety. Most Americans, in their trauma, nodded along. The boogeyman was terrifying, so we handed over our rights in exchange for feeling protected. That was no accident. That was programming. Fear is the most potent tool of the parasite class. It is the master key that unlocks obedience. This is why I repeatedly emphasize eradicating fear from your system, not just as an emotion, but as a frequency, because fear will be used against you again and again to make you submit. False flags are almost always followed by the solution the architects planned in advance. School shootings are designed to eliminate the Second Amendment, one of the final blocks against total tyranny. The right to bear arms is not just about self-defense, it's about defense against corrupt government. That's why, to them, it must be destroyed. Ex-CIA agent Milton William Cooper, aka Bill Cooper, saw it coming. He predicted school shooting false flags before they began, warning that they would be rolled out across the country in a coordinated effort to soften public resistance to gun control. Then Columbine, Sandy Hook, Parkland, Uvalde. Each time, one or two unstable shooters. Each time, a wave of grief and terror. Each time, a renewed call to disarm the public. Cooper was duly murdered on his own front lawn after blowing the whistle. They don't forgive truth tellers. Let me be clear. This does not mean innocent people weren't harmed or killed. Real lives were lost. Children died. However, context matters. The suffering was engineered. There were signs and clues. The shooter had been hearing voices, was on psychotropic meds, had a mysteriously absent family. Details are scrubbed from the internet before the story breaks. Social media warriors now spot these patterns within hours of the events. Still, the mainstream narrative rolls forward. The Boston Marathon bombing was a clear false flag. Ads were posted beforehand calling for crisis actors. Eyewitnesses saw drill operations in progress the day before. The footage, the inconsistencies, the scripted elements all point to orchestration. Again, people were hurt. Nonetheless, the event served a greater purpose: surveillance justification, the tightening of federal control. More recently, mass shooter events at high-profile shopping centers and LGBTQ+ gatherings have been suspiciously timed to distract from politically damaging revelations like classified document leaks, high-level corruption trials, or the resurfacing of intelligence reports exposing long-buried criminal activity among global elites. When something damning is about to surface, a bloody headline appears to hijack the public's attention. It's not a fluke, it's the formula. This is how it works. A high-profile, emotionally charged event occurs. Innocents die. The public is shocked, grieving, afraid. In that emotional vacuum, the parasite class introduces solutions, usually in the form of increased control, surveillance, censorship, or disarmament. The problem was engineered to justify the solution. Understanding this doesn't make you heartless. It makes you clear-eyed. It means recognizing who is profiting from it and refusing to give them your permission. Once you see through the mechanics of the false flag, you become immune to its power. You no longer react in fear. You stop handing over your personal freedom for a false sense of safety. That, above all, is what they fear most: a populace that sees the game and walks away from the table. Virtue signaling. Virtue signaling remains one of the sneakiest tools of moral manipulation in modern society. On the surface, it appears as public goodness, people declaring their righteous values or virtuous choices. Yet scratch the surface, and it's a hollow performance, designed not to help others but to elevate the self. At its core, virtue signaling says, "Look at me, I am good." Not because of what I do, but because of what I say. That's where the deception begins. It's usually divorced from real-world action and deeply rooted in ego. It demands applause while offering little substance. Thank you for listening to this excerpt.